Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Neighbor Karen Let Her Son Steal My Classic Car. Ever since I was a little boy, I have loved cars. I remember my dad and grandpa would always take me to car shows, particularly to look at older cars. My grandpa was really the one that got me into old cars, and I think that those memories with my grandpa gave me such a passionate tie to old cars. I told my dad and grandpa that when I was old enough to get a job, I was going to save up and buy an old car to restore and fix it up. I had gotten my first job at 17 years old and started putting money away each paycheck. However, just a couple of years ago, I am now 24, my grandfather passed away and, in his will, he ended up giving me his 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. I was so emotional when I inherited his car. I was just a 20-ish-year-old kid who was in college, still saving for my dream car, originally a 1972 Mustang. But now I had a beautiful car that was already restored and had been taken care of. At this point, I knew that I would use my saved-up money to continue maintaining my new beloved car. So, just last year I graduated college with my bachelor's, and was finally moving out and living on my own. I had lived with my parents, and then in the college dorms, so I was really excited to move into a rented condo and start my life. And of course, I had my Camaro by my side. Immediately upon moving in, the people next door took interest in my car. It was a beauty, and my grandfather did take really good care of it, so it was not unusual for people, especially car people, to stop and take a look at my car. As days and weeks passed, the mom would frequently stop and talk to me. At first, I thought that she was just being friendly. Heck, I was a naive kid who did not know any better and could not see the red flags. Away, it becomes clear that she wanted something from me. During the summer, her son's birthday was coming up. When she brought this up to me, she then asked me if I would ever be willing to sell my car. Of course, I could see where this was already going and told her that no, I would not be willing to sell my car because I inherited it from my grandpa, and it meant a lot to me. You know, not to be cheesy or anything, but it really did feel like this car was the last piece of my grandpa I had, and it was his baby as well, so I wanted to take care of it. My neighbor then scoffs a little and says something along the lines of how her son is a car lover and yada yada. I straight up told her, that's great, then he knows how hard it would be for me to sell it. After that, she did not have too much to say, so I thought I was done dealing with her for good. Turns out that was not the case. My condo had a garage. Most of the time, this is where I parked my car. Each unit had one signed parking spot plus their garage, since it was just across from my unit. One night, my ring alarm for the garage goes off. It was 3 or 4 in the morning, and it actually woke me up because I have it set up to get notifications on my phone. I did review the footage and can see someone in a dark hoodie opening the door somehow, and trying to break into the car, but when the alarm goes off, they take off running. I have no idea who it was at the time, and I honestly did not even expect it to be my Karen neighbor and her son. I filed a police report because I was scared that people were after my car. And what do you know, a few days later, Karen the neighbor is actually caught trying to steal my car. I am just coming back home from getting groceries, and because I stocked up, I had to make a couple of trips. I left my car right in front of my unit. My condo was facing toward the street, with the door open because, well, you know, I was going to be right back to get the other groceries. Well, to my absolute surprise when I came back, my car was zooming down the street. I know this sounds crazy, but it still did not occur to me that someone could be stealing my car. I thought the car took off by itself. Again, I also might be naive. So, I go racing after my car, and guess who is in the ducking driver's seat? My neighbor's son. He saw it as an opportunity to try and steal it. However, he did not get far because he ended up going so fast that he lost control of the wheel and ended up crashing into a unit at the end of the street. In that moment, I can honestly say that I was heartbroken. I thought my grandpa's beautiful car was gone. I call 911, and so do several other of my neighbors, as well as the people's condo he hit, and he ended up getting arrested. He did try to leave the scene, but one of my neighbors is a badass and tackled him onto the ground while the police came. The mom, the one who was bothering me in the first place about selling it, tried acting like she had no idea what was going on. Obviously, I knew she was full of she*t, and it was funny because while the son was getting cuffed, he shouted at his mom, "You said I could do it. WTF?" Anyways, the son ended up getting charged for grand theft auto and ended up having to pay back the damage he had caused. I am not sure how much the people got for their property getting hit, but I got enough back to repair damages and whatnot to the car. I will admit, I was still pretty upset because there were a lot of original parts in the car that had to be replaced, but at least the crash was not bad enough to where it was completely totaled. I know that if my grandpa is watching, he knows it was not my fault either. As for the mom, I am not really sure what happened to her. But she moved out and nobody has really seen her since. She did try throwing her son under the bus, so maybe she ran, or she got charged with something. Either way, it never amazes me how entitled some people can get. The next story is titled, "Big Group Thinks They Own the Forest Because They Come All the Time." A few months ago, towards the end of the season in this area, I went camping with my friends. We were 3 women. The spot we chose was on a cliff with a great view of a canyon and the creek at the bottom. The area allows dispersed camping and there are very few spots with that view, and it's first come first serve. When we arrived only one spot was left, with the view hidden behind trees but only a few feet away. The view could only be accessed by walking straight through our camp. I think there are other spots you can hike to without going through a campsite. On our first night there, a couple, 2 men, walked into our camp, saying they wanted to see the view. I wasn't super comfortable because you can't trust a stranger in a forest and they were in our space, but they were only there for a few minutes and left. The next day, we went to watch the sunset on the cliff and had left all our stuff lying around camp, when we start hearing cars, dogs, voices, and screaming kids. 2 cars pulled up to our camp and walked right in, making themselves comfortable. We ran back to see all of our space was completely invaded. Kids under our tarp and running around the tent poles, people around our fire, etc. We had a small puppy with us that was terrified of the new dog, but these people didn't care. A woman explained that they lived nearby and love coming to see the view. I was in absolute shock at the disrespect. Everyone is allowed to enjoy nature and it was a public spot, but you have to respect if someone is there first. At least have the decency to ask. As they were leaving, well after sunset, the same woman said they'd be coming later that night to see the stars. My friends were so angry, and I was still in shock. As they were loading their car, I ran up to them and said the first thing that came to mind. I asked one of the men, "Hey, when you come back later, are you planning on bringing the kids?" "Man. I'm not sure, why is that?" "Me. Well, the thing is, we're out here to do heavy drugs, we're starting in a few minutes, and things might get pretty wild, and I wouldn't want to expose children to that. You as adults might be able to handle it, but I don't know what will happen. I don't do any drugs and only drink occasionally." They never came back, thank God, and hopefully they learned something about respecting people's space. The next story is titled, "Don't Call Police When Illegally Parked in Handicap Spot." This happened many years ago during a very busy holiday season. My brother was handicapped and confined to a wheelchair because of a car accident. Mom has a large handicap van that unloads on the passenger side, so we always try to park in the first spot so we can unload him kinda in traffic as places didn't always make the handicap spots large enough. Anyways, we decided to head to the local mall to shop for the day and have circled the mall for about 45 minutes looking for a spot to park. We finally find one that fits exactly what we need and start heading that way. As we are almost there, a guy parks in the spot and starts heading into the mall just as we get there. I roll my window down and also noticed he wasn't handicapped or have any stickers or placards. I asked him if he would move since he didn't need that spot and was told to F off, that he was only going to be a few minutes. Then he took off into the mall. I decided to park behind him, and since he pulled right up to the handicap post, there was no way he was getting out. We unload my brother and start heading into the mall when the guy starts coming out, sees our van parked behind him, noticing he can't get out. He starts demanding that I move the van and I return the duck off comment he gave me earlier. Then he tells me he will call the police if I don't move. I tell him go ahead. While he is on the phone with the police, mall security stops by to help out. I tell them my side of the encounter and they then gets the other guy's story. During this time, local police show up. Mall security then asks if I would be nice and allow the guy to pull out and I could have his spot. I kinda let them know that had he been a bit nicer at the beginning I might have considered it, but since he was a total jerk, I wasn't going to. Local police were busy writing up the ticket for parking illegally in a handicapped space. Mall security and local police chat a few minutes and both came over to me to see if I would move the van again. I let them know that I would not because the guy was such a jerk to us. To my surprise, both mall security and local police just smiled and told us to have a good day shopping. We were inside the mall a good 6 hours and when we came back out, the guy was nowhere to be found, but his car was still there with another ticket on his window. The next story is titled, Karen Threatens to Cut Down a Tree Swing on a Public Tree to Prevent My 4-Year-Old Having a Go. I live in a cul-de-sac but there's a dead-end road down the center so there are two sides. Cast. Me. Karen, the mother, D4 and D6, my 4 and 6-year-old daughters. There are a lot of children in my street, and during the summer they are all usually outside playing together. The parents on my side of the street. We tended to congregate outside someone's house on garden chairs watching the kids and drinking cups of tea. I'm in the UK. Imagine the typical stereotype of a person who lives on a council estate. The other side of the street, many of them literally embody that stereotype. The family in this story, at that time had 6 children, and mum and dad in a 3-bed house. The oldest kids, age 8 to 3, were mostly outside unsupervised. I hate to say it but 2 of them especially, were just generally horrible. Rude, mouthy, mean, stealing other kids' toys, trying to kick my cat etc. We'd had a few issues where one of them had done something to one of my kids and I'd spoken to the parents and they'd done nothing. It got to the point where they were being mean to my kids most of the time and so I told my girls to stay on the side nearest our house. And if these kids bothered then to simply ignore them and walk away. Their mother was very vocal about disliking me. Because if I caught her kids being mean to mine or trying to kick my cat, I'd give them a bollocking. She started mouthing that I had no right to tell her kids what to do, to which I replied that I wouldn't have had to if she or their dad had stepped up and done it. A few days pass and all the kids are leaving each other alone, great. We notice a tree swing had gone up on the big tree on the other side of the street. The tree is about 50 meters from Karen's house, but on a public stretch of grass. After the swing has been up for about a week, Karen's kids have been ignoring my kids. There is a little girl over the other side that my girls get along with. They asked if they could go across and play with her. I said yes, but to stay away from Karen's kids. They play nicely for a while, then I see D4 approach Karen and say something. Karen responds and D4's face crumpled, and she starts to cry. I start towards her as she walks towards me. We meet halfway and I ask why she's crying. She says Karen said she can't go on the tree swing. I told her of course she could. I take her hand and we walk towards it which takes us in front of Karen's house. She has stood outside, sees us walking towards the swing. Karen. She can't go on the swing. Me. Of course, she can. Karen. No, my husband put the tree swing up so it's ours and I've said she can't go on it. She is really starting to lose it, sounding crazy. Meanwhile I'm just responding calmly, smiling at her whilst continuing to walk towards the swing with D4. Me. I don't care if your husband put the swing up, it's on a public tree, on public ground. You can't dictate who uses it. Karen. Yes, I can, my husband put it up and I say no she can't go on it. Me. Well, she is. Karen. No, I said she can't. I'm getting scissors to cut it down. Me. Go ahead. Then we turn and continue walking over while I can still hear her ranting about how she'd rather cut it down than let my kid go on it. She never did anything. We stayed over there for about 20 minutes while both girls had a go on the swing. I made sure they didn't hog it and even made one get off to give Karen's kids a go. They'd done nothing wrong that day. Karen just fumed at me from her front doorway. They moved a few months ago thankfully, and they've just welcomed their 7th child. The last story is entitled Neighbor is Back and Wants Me to Isolate Elsewhere. Well, she's back. Was hoping she just wouldn't come back after she broke her foot but last week we heard a door slam from upstairs. We looked outside and yep her car is there, no idea if her nephew who was house sitting is there or not still. Anyway, a few days ago I tested positive for the much whispered pathogen and have been doing the right thing and staying inside and dying quietly. I'm fully vaccinated so it's not that bad though I could live without the headaches. My partner was away all day Saturday because he was picking up his new car and he got home late Saturday afternoon, parking his new car on the back lawn so he could give it a quick hose down from the drive. I was inside watching through the sliding door when I heard her balcony door open and she started yelling at him to get off her lawn. He told her to shove it, it's not her lawn and he is done when he is done, and can she please stop yelling because I have COVID and it doesn't help the migraines. Well, that was a mistake. I heard her storming down the stairs and she starts banging on our door screaming that I'm diseased and I need to isolate somewhere else before she gets sick, and if I don't leave she was going to call the police. I told her, through the main door, that she has been told repeatedly she can't kick us out of our own place that we own. I am staying inside and that she could call the police if she wanted, but she would more than likely be fined herself for wasting their time. According to my so who was coming in after moving his car, she looked downright murderous, but once she saw him she took off up the stairs. Haven't heard anything from her since or anything from the police, so we think it was an empty threat. I was so tempted to open the door because, like they say, sharing is caring. ETA. Just wanted to add because I've had a few comments on it. We can't get her evicted from her own home as she owns it just like we own ours. Also, lawyers in Australia are very expensive just to talk to. Like when we brought our unit, the lawyers handling the sale charged us for everything. They stuffed up the paperwork by misspelling my name and then charged us more to reissue the papers with the correct name. As far as I know, my upstairs neighbor spoke to his lawyer about her, but they can't do much anyway. Thank you for listening.